What you're about to see will change how you think about justice forever. A woman walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom facing a $500 fine that could destroy her family. But when she reveals her secret, a secret so shocking it stops the entire courtroom dead in its tracks, Judge Caprio does something no judge has ever done before. By the end of this video, you'll witness 3 of the most emotional courtroom moments ever recorded. And I guarantee the third story will make you cry. But before we dive in, smash that subscribe button because less than 3% of you watching are actually subscribed. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. It was a typical Thursday morning in Providence Municipal Court when everything changed. Judge Frank Caprio, known worldwide for his compassionate rulings, had no idea he was about to encounter the most heart-wrenching case of his 30-year career. At exactly 10:23 a.m., a woman quietly entered the courtroom. Sarah Thompson, 32 years old, moved carefully, almost gingerly, taking a seat in the back row. She wore a loose-fitting navy sweater despite the warm September weather, constantly adjusting it, pulling it down over her midsection. To everyone else in that courtroom, Sarah looked like any other defendant. Maybe nervous, maybe running late for work. But Sarah was carrying a secret that would soon stop Judge Caprio's courtroom dead in its tracks. And guys, what happens next is exactly why you need to hit that notification bell. Because stories like this don't come around often. Sarah Elizabeth Thompson, the clerk called out. Sarah stood up slowly, much more slowly than a healthy 32-year-old should. As she walked toward the defendant's stand, Judge Caprio's trained eye noticed something. The way she moved, the pale complexion despite carefully applied makeup, the way she held herself. "Miss Thompson," Judge Caprio began, reviewing her file. "You're charged with failure to appear for jury duty 3 months ago and failure to pay the subsequent fine. The total amount owed is $500. Now, $500 might not sound like much to some of you, but for Sarah's family, it was devastating. Her husband worked 2 jobs, they'd already lost their house, and were living with his mother. But that wasn't even the worst part." Sarah nodded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Can you explain why you failed to appear for jury duty and why this fine hasn't been paid?" Judge Caprio asked. This is the moment everything changes, guys. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. She looked around the courtroom, at other defendants, at the court reporter typing every word, at the security guard by the door. "Your Honor," she finally whispered, I was in the hospital that day." Judge Caprio leaned forward. In 30 years on the bench, he'd heard every excuse imaginable. But something in Sarah's voice told him this wasn't an excuse. "What kind of hospital stay?" he asked gently. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She glanced around the courtroom again, then back at Judge Caprio. "I was getting chemotherapy, Your Honor." Boom. The entire courtroom fell silent. The woman next to where Sarah had been sitting gasped audibly. The security guard, a tough ex-cop who'd seen it all, straightened up. Judge Caprio set down his pen. "Miss Thompson, are you telling me you have cancer?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. "And you were receiving treatment on the day you were supposed to report for jury duty?" "Yes, sir. I started treatment in June. The jury summons came while I was already in chemotherapy. I called the jury office, but they said I needed documentation from my doctor, and I was so sick from the treatments I couldn't get the paperwork together in time." But guys, this is where the story takes an even more incredible turn. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench, something he rarely does during proceedings. He walked around to eliminate the formal distance between bench and defendant. "Ms. Thompson, what type of cancer are you battling?" Sarah's voice broke. "Breast cancer, Your Honor. Stage 3. I found out I was pregnant and had cancer at the same time." Did you catch that? Pregnant and cancer. At the same time. The courtroom collectively held its breath. "You were pregnant?" Judge Caprio asked softly. "I am pregnant, Your Honor, 8 months now. I've been doing chemotherapy while pregnant. My daughter, she's due in 3 weeks. And there it was. The secret Sarah had been carrying, not just cancer, not just pregnancy. Both. Fighting for her life while growing new life inside her. Judge Caprio's eyes filled with tears. In 3 decades of seeing human struggle, this stopped him cold. "Ms. Thompson, you are fighting cancer while pregnant, and you're worried about a jury duty fine?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming. Your Honor, I can't afford the $500. My husband works 2 jobs, but the medical bills. We've lost our house. We're living with my mother-in-law. I can't pay it. What Judge Caprio does next will restore your faith in humanity. But first, if you're enjoying this story, show some love by hitting that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Judge Caprio walked back to his bench, but not to sit down. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out something unexpected, his personal checkbook. Miss Thompson, here's what we're going to do. Not only am I dismissing this fine completely, but I want you to know something. He wrote out a check, tore it from the book, and walked back to Sarah. This is a personal donation to help with your medical expenses. And Miss Thompson? Yes, Your Honor? You are the bravest woman who has ever stood in my courtroom. You are fighting for 2 lives, yours and your daughter's. That makes you a hero in my book. Sarah Paul Slash. The courtroom erupted in applause. People were openly crying. A man in the gallery stood up clapping, then another. Within seconds, everyone was on their feet giving Sarah a standing ovation. Sarah collapsed into sobs, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers. But Judge Caprio wasn't done. Court clerk, get me the contact information for St. Joseph's Hospital Foundation and Rhode Island Cancer Society. Thoughtful. Ms. Thompson, you're not fighting this alone anymore. The aftermath will blow your mind, guys. 3 weeks later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Sophia Grace Thompson. Her cancer was successfully treated, caught early thanks to pregnancy screenings. The donations that poured in after the court video went viral paid for her entire treatment and helped her family get back on their feet. But we're just getting started. That story probably has you emotional. But wait until you hear what's coming next. Guys, what you just witnessed was incredible, but I need you to prepare yourself for what's coming next. An 82-year-old World War II veteran walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom with a secret hidden under his sleeves for over 50 years. When Judge Caprio discovers what's on this man's arms, he does something no judge in American history has ever done before. And I'm warning you right now, if the first story moved you, the second one will absolutely destroy you emotionally. But here's the thing. Only 2.8% of people watching this video are subscribed. If you want to see more incredible stories like these, hit that subscribe button right now. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it helps us bring you more life-changing content. It was a cold February morning when 82-year-old Robert Bob Martinez shuffled into Judge Caprio's courtroom. Bob moved slowly, aided by a walking cane, wearing a heavy winter coat despite the courtroom's warmth. He was there for a simple parking violation, $75 fine for parking in a handicapped space without a visible permit. Seems straightforward, right? Wrong. What Judge Caprio was about to discover would leave the entire courtroom in stunned silence and change how we think about the sacrifices our veterans made. Robert Martinez, the clerk called. Bob slowly made his way to the defendant's stand. Judge Caprio noticed immediately that, despite his age, Bob stood with military posture, shoulders back, chin up. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Mr. Martinez, you're charged with parking in a handicapped space without displaying a handicapped permit. The fine is $75. Do you have anything to say? Bob cleared his throat. Your Honor, I do have a handicap permit. I forgot to hang it up that day. Now guys, pause for a second. Judge Caprio has heard this excuse hundreds of times. Usually he'd ask to see the permit, maybe reduce the fine if the person actually has one. But something about Bob's demeanor made him dig deeper. Mr. Martinez, I see here you're 82 years old. Can you tell me about your handicap? Bob hesitated. He looked down at his hands, then back up at Judge Caprio. I'd rather not discuss it, Your Honor. This is where Judge Caprio's legendary compassion kicked in. Instead of pushing harder, he softened his approach. Bob, may I call you Bob? I can see you're a proud man. You carry yourself like military. Did you serve? Bob's entire demeanor changed. His chest puffed out slightly. Yes, sir. United States Marine Corps. 2 tours in Vietnam. The moment Bob said Vietnam, everything clicked for Judge Caprio. Vietnam veterans faced horrors that most of us can't even imagine. and many came back with invisible wounds that took decades to acknowledge.
Thank you for your service, Bob. Can you help me understand why you need the handicap permit?
Bob was quiet for a long moment. The courtroom was completely silent. Your Honor, It's hard to talk about. Judge Caprio stood up and walked around his bench, his signature move when he sensed someone was struggling. Bob, there's no judgment here. We're all friends. What's going on? Bob looked around the courtroom, then back at Judge Caprio. Slowly, very slowly, he began rolling up his sleeves. Guys, what happened next shocked everyone in that courtroom. Bob's arms were covered in scars, deep, jagged scars that told a story of unimaginable trauma. But that wasn't all. On his right forearm, barely visible through the scar tissue, were numbers tattooed in faded black ink. Judge Caprio's eyes widened. Those weren't military tattoos. Those were... Softly. Bob, Judge Caprio said softly, are those concentration camp numbers? The courtroom gasped collectively. Bob nodded, tears forming in his eyes. Yes, Your Honor, I'm a Holocaust survivor. Wait, what? I was born in Poland. When I was 8 years old, my family was taken to Auschwitz. My parents, my little sister, they didn't make it. I survived, barely. After the war, I came to America, changed my name, joined the Marines to serve my new country. I never talked about the camps, not to my wife, not to my children. Only my doctor knows, because of these scars. Judge Caprio was speechless. The courtroom was dead silent except for the sound of people quietly crying. Bob, you're not just a Vietnam veteran. You're a Holocaust survivor and a Vietnam veteran. Yes, sir. The handicap permit is because of nerve damage in my legs from experiments they did in the camp. Some days I can barely walk. This 82-year-old man survived the Holocaust as a child, came to America, served 2 tours in Vietnam, and never told anyone his story. And he was embarrassed about needing a handicapped parking permit. Judge Caprio walked over to Bob and did something unprecedented. He hugged him. Right there in open court, a judge hugged a defendant. Bob, not only am I dismissing this fine, but I want you to know something. You are the definition of American courage. You survived the unthinkable, then volunteered to serve the country that gave you freedom. The courtroom erupted. Everyone was on their feet applauding. Grown men were crying. Court officers were wiping their eyes. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. Court reporter, stop recording for a moment. What happened next wasn't officially recorded, but witnesses say Judge Caprio spent 20 minutes talking with Bob privately. He arranged for Bob to speak at local schools about his experiences and connected him with veteran support services he didn't even know existed. The video of this case, when it was finally released, went viral worldwide. Bob received thousands of letters from people thanking him for his service and his courage. But guys, I need to prepare you for story number 3, because what you're about to hear will break your heart and put it back together in the most beautiful way possible. Judge Caprio walked over to Bob and did something unprecedented. He hugged him. Right there in open court, a judge hugged a defendant. Thoughtful. Bob, not only am I dismissing this fine, but I want you to know something. You are the definition of American courage. You survived the unthinkable, then volunteered to serve the country that gave you freedom. The courtroom erupted. Everyone was on their feet applauding. Grown men were crying. Court officers were wiping their eyes. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. Court reporter, stop recording for a moment. What happened next wasn't officially recorded, but witnesses say Judge Caprio spent 20 minutes talking with Bob privately. He arranged for Bob to speak at local schools about his experiences and connected him with veteran support services he didn't even know existed. The video of this case, when it was finally released, went viral worldwide. Bob received thousands of letters from people thanking him for his service and his courage. But guys, I need to prepare you for story number 3. Because what you're about to hear will break your heart and put it back together in the most beautiful way possible. The final story I'm about to tell you involves a single mother who walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom with her young son. She owes money for unpaid parking tickets, but when Judge Caprio learns why she couldn't pay and what her little boy whispers to him, He makes a decision that will leave you sobbing. This story went so viral that it changed laws in 3 different states. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe right now because content like this is exactly why this channel exists. Maria Santos walked into Providence Municipal Court, holding her 7-year-old son Diego's hand tightly. She wore her work uniform. She was a janitor at the local hospital, working night shifts so she could be with Diego during the day. Maria was facing $800 in unpaid parking tickets accumulated over 6 months. For a single mother working minimum wage, it might as well have been $8,000. Maria Santos, the clerk called. Maria approached with Diego by her side. Judge Caprio immediately noticed the little boy, well-dressed, clean, clearly well cared for, despite their obvious financial struggles. Ms. Santos, you have multiple parking violations totaling $800. These tickets were issued near St. Mary's Elementary School. Can you explain? Maria looked nervous. Her English wasn't perfect, but she spoke clearly. Your Honor, I know I parked wrong. I work at a hospital from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I pick up Diego from my neighbor who watches him, and I have to drop him at school by 8 a.m. Then I go home to sleep before work again. Here's where the story gets complicated, guys. The parking near the school, it costs money. The meter, it takes quarters. Some days I don't have quarters. Judge Caprio looked confused. Miss Santos, the parking meters take credit cards now. Maria looked down, embarrassed. Your Honor, I don't have credit card. I don't have bank account. I cash my check at store, and I keep money for rent, food, Diego's school supplies. Sometimes there is no money left for parking meter. This woman was getting parking tickets because she couldn't afford quarters for the parking meter. Judge Caprio leaned forward. Ms. Santos, why don't you have a bank account? I had one before, but when Diego's father left, I had no money. The bank, they charged fees when my account was empty. I owed them money, so now no bank will let me have account. Judge Caprio was starting to understand. This wasn't someone trying to cheat the system. This was someone trapped in a cycle of poverty that made following the rules nearly impossible. Ms. Santos, tell me about your son. How is he doing in school? Maria's face lit up for the first time. Diego, he is so smart. He gets all A's. His teacher says he could go to college someday. Diego tugged on his mother's sleeve and whispered something to her in Spanish. What did he say? Judge Caprio asked gently. Maria hesitated. He wants to know if you're going to put me in jail. The entire courtroom felt that punch to the gut. Judge Caprio looked at Diego, this 7-year-old boy who was worried his mother might be taken away from him over parking tickets. Thoughtful, Diego, can you come here? Diego walked slowly to Judge Caprio's bench. Diego, I'm not going to put your mom in jail, but I want to ask you something. Do you help your mom? Diego nodded seriously. I help count the money for groceries, and I help carry the heavy bags from the laundry. Surprised, you help count grocery money? Why? Because Mama sometimes forgets how much things cost when she's tired from work. Judge Caprio realized this 7-year-old was helping his mother manage their finances because she was so exhausted from working nights and caring for him during the day. Thoughtful. Diego, what do you want to be when you grow up? A judge, like you, but a nice judge who helps people. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying. Judge Caprio looked at Maria. Ms. Santos, here's what we're going to do. I'm dismissing all these fines. But more importantly, I want to help you break this cycle. He turned to his court clerk. Please get me the contact information for First Community Bank. Ms. Santos, they have a program for people in your situation to open a bank account with no fees. Then he did something extraordinary. Judge Caprio reached into his wallet and pulled out a roll of quarters. Diego, this is for your mom's parking meters. But I want you to promise me something. Keep getting those A's, okay? But Judge Caprio wasn't done. Court officers, please escort Ms. Santos and Diego to my chambers. I want to discuss some resources that might help. What happened in those chambers changed their lives forever. Judge Caprio connected Maria with a hospital program that provided daytime childcare for night shift workers' children. He helped her open that bank account. And he arranged for Diego to receive a scholarship to a private after-school program. But the most incredible part? 6 months later, Diego wrote Judge Caprio a letter. Maria had gotten promoted to a day shift supervisor position. They'd moved into their own apartment, and Diego was still getting all A's. The letter ended with, "Dear Judge Caprio, you didn't just help my mom with parking tickets, you gave us hope. I still want to be a judge like you someday. Thank you for showing me what kindness looks like."
Guys, what you just witnessed in these 3 stories is the power of compassion in action. Judge Frank Caprio didn't just follow the law. He saw the human being behind each case and chose to make a difference. Sarah Thompson, the pregnant cancer patient, she's now cancer-free. Her daughter is thriving, and she advocates for other cancer patients going through treatment. Bob Martinez, the Holocaust survivor and Vietnam veteran, he now speaks regularly at schools and has become a powerful voice for veteran awareness. And Maria Santos, she eventually became a nurse at the same hospital where she once worked as a janitor. Diego, he's now 12 years old, still getting straight A's, and still says he wants to be a judge. These stories prove that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply treat each other with kindness and dignity. If these stories moved you, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear these stories today. Because in a world that can feel divided and harsh, stories like these remind us that compassion is still alive and well. And guys, if you want to see more incredible stories of human resilience and kindness, check out my playlist of the most emotional courtroom moments ever recorded. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.